This is Madelyn Cline. Hi. She's my good friend from childhood, and she is now a famous actress in Hollywood in Outer Banks. How did you get into acting, and why do you love it?
I got started when I was around 10, and I did commercial print modeling. So I spent a lot of my summers growing up in New York, which is where I met Melanie. And then once I hit about, I want to say like 15 or 16, which I kind of tapered off. I wanted to focus on school. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it long term. It was mostly just a way for me to save up for college. And then when I actually got to college, I was splitting my time between Myrtle Beach and Atlanta, and I was going back and forth between the two for auditions and callbacks. And my school said that they would be flexible, but obviously, like, you can only miss so much. My school was like, we don't know what to tell you. You can't miss midterm. So I had to choose, and obviously I chose the work. So I basically packed up my dorm room, and I was hotel jumping in Atlanta to do Stranger Things in the originals. And then after that, I saved up enough money to move to LA. It wasn't this crazy epiphany I had. I enjoyed the work. I knew it was something I wanted to do. And I was like, why not try it when I'm young?
I remember you were so young when we met, and you were coming
I
all the
know.
way from South Carolina?
South Carolina.
All the way from South Carolina to New York City for acting class. And I was like, wow, this girl is dedicated. And I'm so happy for you. I feel like if anyone deserves to succeed and get all the positive attention that you're getting, it's you, because you just were so sweet, and you are so sweet. And
it was so little. We were so little. I look back at pictures and I'm like, oh my God, like babies. We had such good memories though.
I know.
Those summers. Those are some of my favorite memories.
What was like some of the highlights of your time there in terms of learning acting?
My mom put me in classes because we were there all summer, and she's like, I can't handle you. I'm going to put you in these all day intensives 3 days a week so that you get this energy out. But the great thing is like New York, obviously being like a theater hub, has so many great teachers. And even though we were young, they touched on Meisner. They introduced us to a lot of amazing plays and great writing. And they like, our homework was to watch like classic cinema. And so that's kind of where the love of it started, was because we were, sitting in classes and we had adults and they took it seriously and they expected us to take it seriously. And I kind of just fell in love with character analysis and plays, to be in a scene study class and to sit with a piece or a play for I don't know how many months on end and like constantly make discoveries about characters, really live in these characters' shoes. Like, that was something that I was just always really fascinated by. They knew how to touch on that childlike wonder and imagination we had pretty young. One of their big things was just like, keep that wonder of the world and apply that to your work.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because when you're a kid, you play pretend and you don't think about what people think of you. You're just a lot more carefree. And I feel like a lot of people lose that when they get older. So it's awesome that you were able to harness that and hold on to it kind of and bring it into adulthood. And it's so clear in your work. It's very truthful, and I really enjoy watching you.
Thank you so much. Oh, that makes me I'm blushing.
So how is trying to break into such a competitive and cutthroat industry?
One of the positives is a lot of the film industry is transitioning to the Southeast. So in that regard, there was a bit of an opening for Southeast actors to get in the rooms and get some experience, especially because everything now is digital. So, self-tapes, you can send in auditions to any casting office anywhere in the country. But that being said, the industry is very cutthroat. It's so easy to believe that you're not enough. And then when I moved out here, it only kind of reinforced that idea in my head. And it was really, really hard to get in any rooms because it is so saturated out in LA. There are so many actors, and a lot of times casting offices will look at what your following is. And, for someone who's just moving out from South Carolina, I didn't have a big following. And so a lot of times, like, I would go to offices, one of the first questions they would ask you is like, what is your following? Like, how many followers do you have?
On
And
Instagram?
so, yeah. And so I can't tell you like how heart wrenching it is to walk into an office and like recognize influencers and sitting in the same office knowing that like you have nowhere near what their following is, but like you're just like, please give me a chance. I feel like I've got the chops, and a lot of other people I've spoken to really kind of resent that mixture of influencer culture and acting. But it was pretty difficult because I was just sitting out here thinking like, did I make the biggest mistake ever? Like, but no, I mean, it ended up paying off. And then that was when I got Boy Erase. That came out of complete left field. My agent in the Southeast and my manager called, and they said that Joel Edgerton wanted to have a director session. And I absolutely freaked out, like geeked, like completely. I was like, excuse me, like who?
How does it feel going from being sort of like a normal person to being super famous and having like a million people want to talk to you?
So it's interesting because, you know, some of the cast, we have been quarantined together. I think because we've just kind of stayed in our tight-knit little group, it doesn't really feel real. As far as social media is concerned, it just feels like I bought a bunch of followers. It's like it just, and then also hopefully, like, fingers crossed, knock on wood, you know, maybe we'll be shooting a season 2.
I hope so. I want to know what
I
happened.
do too. I do too. I mean, there's too many loose ends. Also, the response has been so overwhelmingly positive.
So it's not
I'm
too
really
overwhelming.
hoping. The only thing that's been overwhelming is the fact that, and we talked about this, I'm notorious for, like, I will put my phone somewhere and leave it. I'm not really used to having to like engage with people too often on social media. I've been on the phone almost constantly. Our fan base is so incredibly sweet. I feel like I want to talk to them and I want to give them like content that they want to watch.
What's your biggest fear when it comes to this career?
It's so nebulous and mercurial, the industry, and there's always the fear of nothing is guaranteed. I definitely don't want to be typecast. I would love to do a role that's completely opposite of Sarah. I would love to do something really gritty. A24 would be a dream. I'd love to do a thriller.
So let's talk about Sarah. In what ways do you relate to her? And is there anything about her that you don't relate to?
We obviously, I mean, we're both Southern. We both have great relationships with our fathers. And I think a big thing, and this was definitely something that, you know, I focused on a lot in character development. You know, one of my big questions with Sarah was like, I knew that she had this issue with connecting with people. Like, she gets close to them and then she leaves them. I'm like, what drives the person to do that? And what I came up with was insecurity. I think we are afraid to get too close because we're afraid that people aren't going to like us. So we leave someone before they can leave us.
So you're saying that in your life, like, you've had the tendency to leave people because you were afraid of them leaving you.
I went through a very, very toxic relationship a few years back. I was absolutely head over heels, and this guy was not at all. I was an ego boost. It was kind of like on again, off again, but it was completely toxic. And it was one of those things where he'd say jump and I would say how high. I made excuses for him. I lied for him, like just bent over backwards. You know, I finally had a breaking point. Every relationship after that, it was almost like I was trying to prove to myself that like I could be loved. And then whenever I got too close to actually falling or like, you know, too vulnerable, I would pull back and I would leave. So to recognize that in Sarah, it was almost like this crazy therapy session because I was doing a deep dive into my brain and the things that I did, because to use people like that is not okay, even if you don't realize you're doing it. And so I saw that in Sarah. I was like, oh my God, like what a crazy parallel.
So did it bring up like a lot of hard memories when you were playing her then?
There were a couple times I definitely had like little breakdowns. They were kind of like panic attacks, but I think that was due to like me kind of unearthing some of those feelings from the past. When you first read the script, or when you kind of first see Sarah with Topper, and you know, she seems into it, and then all of a sudden she's like, like I'm not digging this at all. When I first read that, I was like, what the hell is wrong with this girl? Like, what is her MO? And then, after kind of doing that deep dive, I was like, okay, I get it. It was very cathartic. And I just think as far as character development, it's a very important thing to approach your characters with empathy.
I think you just bring so much to the character, so much likability and so much authenticity. So in terms of getting into character, you talked about thinking about these memories and trying to have empathy. Is there anything that you do almost as a ritual to get yourself in the right mindset to play Sarah?
A lot of my deep preparation was for like stuff with my dad, or like some of the really traumatic stuff that happened, and that's where I kind of take my time and really kind of go inward and try to like create circumstances.
Does it ever get difficult to come out of something like that, or is it just like scene ends and like you breathe out?
For the most part, yes, it's very hard for me to come out of that. A few times, especially on the tarmac, I remember really vividly the scene where Sheriff Peterkin ends up getting murdered by Rafe. That was a really difficult scene to shoot because we had such amazing actors. To see all of that kind of unfold before your eyes, it's traumatic. I was devastated by the end of that scene. Like I didn't stop crying. By the close-ups, I was like, I can't cry anymore. Like I'm crying, but like there are no tears and I need them. Holly, the head of our makeup department, she would like rub Vicks under my eyelids. She's like, keep going, you got it.
Oh my God.
But to have a scene like that, it is really hard to come out of it at the end of the scene when everything is said and done. You're just like when you've taken the SAT, you go home and you're like, thank God.
How many times do you think you did that scene?
I'm just take a gander and say maybe 60.
60? God, that's insane. Are there any funny stories from set?
So many great stories. There was one time, mid-scene, I don't know why, but my underwear ripped.
Oh, no.
And it was a serious scene too. I was like supposed to be upset, and then I felt it, and I was like, "Hey guys, can we reset?" And there was one time Rudy, who plays JJ, in the middle of a take, he just ripped a massive fart, and it was supposed to be a very serious scene, and he farted. Like I didn't think anybody would hear it. He's like, I didn't think it would be that loud, and it was, and obviously it was just like. Everybody just lost it. It was like 3 a.m. Everybody was tired, and you just fart.
So that was the brilliant Madelyn Cline. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and comment below with whom you want me to interview next.